Hey, welcome back to the Big Esports Podcast. In this episode, we've got a real esports industry veteran and OG, Ben Goldhaber. We talked about his platform Juked, which is helping to aggregate esports content, cutting through a lot of the fragmentation that sits in the esports market right now. But Ben's been around since the foundation of Twitch. He's been a commentator, he's been a player, he's been a tournament operator, he's done a bit of everything. So not only we talk about Juked and their current public crowdfunding, but we also talk about a lot of trends in the market and what we'd like to see people doing better. So hopefully you learn a thing or two from this episode. If you want to ask any questions about this to myself or him, you can hit him up on Twitter at FishSticks, that sticks with an S, or with an X, or me on LinkedIn or Twitter at Smithy Mayo. Thanks, hope you enjoy. Ben, we're live, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about you, Chris? It's been a little while since we last chatted.
Yeah, I think it's been a year. I think.
Yeah.
Like, James Bryce Lynn was still with us before he ran off to the UK when we were talking about like your first, was it your seed round or something like that? So you're definitely well past that right now.
Yeah, well, pre-seed round back then, but yeah. A lot changes in a year when you're a startup, and a lot changes in a year in esports in general. Yeah,
that's really true. Well, I guess it was pre-coronavirus, right? That's probably the big thing to talk about.
Too, obviously.
So this is your second appearance, I guess, on the podcast and content as a whole. But for those people who are just tuning in for the first time, whether they're live on LinkedIn, listening to audio only or video, can you just give a really quick rundown into you, your lengthy history within esports, and then also Juked and what you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. I'm Ben Goldhaber. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Juked.gg. We are creating the new home for esports fans, really trying to consolidate the really fragmented ecosystem for fans. So right now, if you're an esports fan, you have to go to all these different sources just to stay on top of your favorite games and teams. And we think that makes a really high barrier to entry to becoming a fan in the first place. And even if you're like myself or you're like Chris, and you're already embedded in the ecosystem, it can be quite painful just to stay on top of everything that's going on. So unlike in traditional sports where you've got Sports Center, you've got apps sending you push notifications every time your favorite teams go live, that's really not the case in esports. So that's the fundamental problem that we're trying to solve. We're trying to make it easy to follow all of your favorite games, players, and teams in one place. And we're trying to build a sense of community in esports as well, which is really a personal passion of mine. I've been involved in esports for actually like 20 years. The first 10 years I was a player. I then became an esports commentator, tournament organizer, and host. But for the first 10 years, I had zero aspirations whatsoever to make a career in esports. It was a passion. It was a hobby. It was something I did during my weekends and free time. But I had the opportunity to actually join the founding team at Twitch back in 2011, which was amazing. It was, right out of college, I was able to join that team early because I was creating content, because I was doing all of this stuff in esports. It was a natural fit for me to join that team. So not only was I lucky to get a full-time job in esports, I actually got to ride that wave at Twitch for about 7.5 years, obviously through the Amazon acquisition. I do consider myself one of the luckiest people ever.
That's good, man. Yeah, that's pretty good. So obviously, esports has changed astronomically since then, and I'm glad you mentioned like about the fragmentation part, because I guess that's a topic that for some reason I didn't plan on talking about, but it makes sense. So I feel like over the years, esports has become so much more fragmented, right? Like if you were to do anything about Counter-Strike, you would go straight to CEVO forums, and that's where everybody who ever played Counter-Strike competitively would talk. So if you want to announce a tournament or join a team or anything like that, you go there. But now it's common, it's like, hey, I'm 16 years old, I'm a CSGO player, I've reached a couple of ranks in online, I'd like to play pro. Where do I go? You Google like CSGO esports and you hit with like 40 different websites. And then, you hit with some that are just America only, some that are just India, some that are just once-off tournament series, some that are long-term. Like how the hell do you even know how to enter in the market? Like I'd love to hear from you guys about how like you're fixing some of that fragmentation.
Yeah, so I mean, actually, there's maybe two separate fragmentation problems. One is related to if you want to play in tournaments and you want to find organized competition, it's extremely difficult. We are not tackling that problem today. The problem that we're tackling is actually more for the fans of esports that want to watch every stream, follow their favorite players and teams, get scores, stats, highlights, consume that kind of show content in one place. It's really, really difficult. difficult. But, one of the other, I think, really big opportunities in esports right now is to tackle being the central destination where you go for amateur play. I think you mentioned SIVO, and I think that definitely resonates, because if I go back 10 years, and I know your audience, maybe not everyone in your audience is super endemic to esports, maybe they are, but it was really easy 10 years ago to go to Cal, the Cal I League or Cal leagues, and enter organized competition, regular league play. I had friends back then who never would have ever considered themselves gamers. They never went on to play games competitively after that point, but they paid $10 per season to play in a Cal league because it was just where everyone was. It was really easy to do. It was really streamlined. And I think that that's also another opportunity in esports, frankly.
Yeah, it's like the most exciting thing and the worst thing about esports, right? There's so much going on all the time. But you're definitely right. I even use the example to people that even here in Australia, I think we had 6 CSGO things were happening at once at one stage. We had like 3 leagues, and then a DreamHack qualifier, and then like a BenQ Zowie Asia qualifier, and then like an MDL qualifier as well. With 3 regular seasons happening at the same time, and it's just crazy. And it's part of the advantage of sports where that kind of stuff exists. So you can just join. You don't need to buy a franchise. You can just come up from the grassroots. You can win these tournaments, and you can win your way off overseas to Sweden to play from Australia, which is great. But then also it creates exactly those issues that we're talking about, which is like, hey, when and where things are. And it's been a thing that's always surprised me as someone who's run tournaments in the past, is just how hard it is often, even when you're actively looking, to just find like, who won this tournament? What was the prize money? Where did my favorite team place? Where are they playing next? Who's playing in the tournaments? When are the tournaments on? Where do I watch them? And you'd think it would be obvious, because if you're running a tournament, you're making money off people watching it. But often it just seems really hard, even when you're actively looking.
Yeah, and I think the important part also there is, from a storyline perspective, which tournaments actually matter. I think that's one really lacking area in esports today, is really telling those storylines. This is a bit of a tangent and an anecdote, but I started watching a Netflix show about kids in Oakland, my hometown, playing in for a Laney College, which is like it's not even a proper university. It's a trade school essentially, and they had this football team. And this documentary is so well produced. It's telling such beautiful storylines about the players and the human elements. And it just occurred to me that this event about this documentary about a tiny little team that probably nobody is watching their games on a regular basis, it's exceeding what we have in esports. There's so many storylines out there that are not being told, and I think that's it's unfortunate. It's something I'd love to see changed over the next decade.
Yeah, that's true. It's something I haven't thought about for a long time, right? Like, if you've got an ESL league and a DreamHack league, and one team wins the ESL league and then simply doesn't play in the DreamHack league, who's the best team? Like, I don't know. And you see this discussion all the time happen in Dota 2, right? Like around the international, where a team like OG, they're like, well, are they going to perform this year? I don't know, because they skipped out in 75% of the tournaments. Mm-hmm. So you just don't know who the best team is, because it's not like you're consistently playing against each other on a round robin on a single ladder, like in the NFL or baseball or any other traditional sport.
And now we don't even have the international this year, which is like really sad. Yeah, that's true. So like, how did you identify this problem? Is it the very standard of, a startup founder / entrepreneur says, I'm having a lot of trouble, I just want to go and fix this problem for myself? It was. I mean, we are our prototypical users. My co-founder Chris and I we've been in the space for a decade each, for me even longer, and we're the type of people that actually care about following every major tournament, whether it's League of Legends Worlds, which actually starts in a couple of hours. Maybe like 12 hours from now, it'll be going live, or 10 hours from now. We want to watch EVO, the biggest fighting game tournament in the world. We want to watch the big Smash Brothers majors. We want to watch the CSGO majors. We're going to always watch the international. And what I've learned from speaking to hundreds and hundreds of our own users on Juked, as well as talking to all of my friends in the industry, is that this is actually a pretty common behavior. You want to know what's happening across the biggest events, almost regardless of what game it is. Now, not every esport fan is like this, but I would say the majority are at least interested in following and knowing about all of the biggest events. And when it comes to COVID has really impacted how many major tournaments there are happening right now in esports, and really what has gravitas and what doesn't. But in a typical year, I mean, like if you go back to 2019, every single weekend you were having 6, 7, 8 tournaments that all mattered, that all had hundreds of thousands of dollars in prizing, that all had hundreds of thousands of viewers watching throughout the tournament. And there was no easy way to follow all of that. So that was really the core problem that we wanted to solve as fans ourselves. And that was really the motivation for it.
How do you find the stickiness on the platform for you guys? Like making a generalization into all of esports, what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from investors is there's a bunch of different esports technology startups. The ideas look really cool. They can get users easily, but users don't stick around. Do you see people going to Juked.gg instead of just going to twitch.tv and hitting the browse function?
Yeah, I mean, our most dedicated users, I guess our prototypical user is somebody who follows esports, or actually a lot of the time they used to follow esports, but now they don't necessarily have the time or resources to do it anymore. They've got a job and they've got a kid and they've got a dog and they've got a family, and they don't feel like they're able to express their fandom for esports as much as they used to. So really the type of user that loves to come back to Juked every single day to see what's happening is that type of fan who loves esports as in theory, but doesn't have the capability to follow everything like they could previously. So, we found something similar where it's really great and easy to get exposure for Juked, because we can partner with esports tournaments, we can partner with esports leagues, we can partner with content creators and the esports teams, and we can use SEO and social media and content to get the brand out there. But I think, we definitely have some growing to do when it comes to features that keep people coming back every single day. It's something we think about a lot.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I guess like try and draw like an analogy between that. This is why I feel like Fortnite as an esport for competitors has been so successful, because it removes all of that friction. We keep talking about how it's actually hard to be an esports fan a lot of the times. It creates a lot of manual work. And this is why, I always have these questions around those third-party tournament platform companies, because in Fortnite, literally you open the game. It says, hey, do you want to enter a tournament? It's happening in 10 minutes. You go, yep, and then you play. That's it. It doesn't require you to do any other signups, doesn't require you to pay any entry fees, anything like that. And bam, you're thrown straight on a leaderboard, and they wire $10,000 to your bank account if you play well.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the holy grail for that esports has lacked for a long time. I wish we saw that in more games. But again, that solves problems for the player. It doesn't necessarily solve problems for the fan who wants to know who the best player is, who wants to watch those streams. I mean, in Fortnite, most of these events aren't even being streamed by one central source. It's only done by individual players streaming to their own channels. So it's incredibly difficult, even in that case, as a fan, to know what's happening and who what matters, who to watch, things like that.
So who are you mainly picking up the slack from then? Can you be better supported by the tournament providers? Can you be better supported by the publishers? Like who can help you guys grow and produce a better product?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a ton of luck working with partners, partnering up with tournaments so far, because frankly, if you're Activision Blizzard, you have the development team to create OverwatchLeague.com or Call of Duty League.com, and those are pretty good experiences. So if you're only an Overwatch League fan and that's all you care about, I would say you're decently well served. I'd say there's some things our product does better than OverwatchLeague.com, but we don't need to go into the nitty gritty details. But if you go, maybe down one rung from the leagues that the publishers and developers are running themselves, if you look at the grassroots tournaments, but even up to the ESLs and the DreamHacks of the world, they're typically just linking directly to their Twitch channel or to their YouTube channel. And on a Twitch channel, you're not going to get brackets. You're not going to get standings. You're not going to get stats. You're not going to know who these players are on each team. You're not going to know what the team rosters are. You're not even going to know the schedule. I mean, Twitch technically does have a schedule system, but it's really not used widely, especially in the esports space. So, I think the reason why we've been able to work with tournament organizers is because our landing pages offer so much more value to the average user than simply linking to your Twitch channel or simply linking to YouTube, because you get all of that context really one click away. You're going to find anything you need to know about that tournament. So, because we've provided that value, we've been able to partner up with tournament organizers. In some cases, we've done sponsorships, but a lot of the time we're just saying, hey, we're going to set you up, we're going to promote your event, and then we get co-marketing in return. And that's been an awesome way for us to grow.
And I guess like using a direct example for that, with some of my research, what's been hard is finding out with League of Legends. What is the Brazilian League of Legends tournament called? I didn't know it was called CBLOL. I have no idea how I could have guessed that. So I'm Googling everywhere. And then I'm trying to find who on each of the splits and what does a split actually mean? What is the summer 2020 split? And okay, summer, well, that's the opposite because they're in Brazil and I'm in Australia. And it was so confusing trying to go through it and figuring out, the pathway as to, what teams placed where, or, I had this happen as well with the Pro Evolution Soccer Finals as well, doing some research for a client with the project we're working on, and just trying to find like who won the tournament, where was it, what was the prize pool, how many people were in the crowd, where can I watch the videos? And it was a lengthy process of trying to find that stuff. So like you guys are presenting everything that's happened live, but do you have a history of things that are going on as well that people can look through?
Yeah, so on Juked, you can find past matches and VODs, and we actually have a search function too. So we recently launched esports team pages as well. So if you're a fan of Cloud9, you can go to Cloud9's page and find all of their most recent results and VODs. I think we definitely have some iterations to do. In no way would I say that Juked is perfect, but I think we do make it pretty easy to find that kind of thing.
So what's the exit for you guys, if I can ask? Like, are you looking to be acquired by a larger technology platform? Do you think this is something that Twitch would buy?
I probably a little bit early to start speculating on these types of things, but we do look out into the ecosystem and see who's investing in esports within their own properties, who have made acquisitions in the past, and it's the Disneys of the world with ESPN Esports, and they're putting esports all over their TV channels on Disney XD as well as ESPN2 and ESPN3. It's the Turners of the world, which obviously have E-League, which is their own esports property, but Turner, not super recently, but pretty recently acquired Bleacher Report for a whole big hunk of change. So I think when we look at that kind of long-term scenario for Juked and how we're going to give return to our investors as well as our employees, I think an exit scenario with one of these media giants that already loves esports and is looking to stay in tune with the younger audience is our best scenario.
And I guess that's a good segue talking about raising, right? So you guys right now are doing a public crowd fund. So, selling off a portion of your company to potential mainstream investors, members of the public and fans. From what I can understand, this is the third that I've seen in esports as a whole. There was an Australian esports team called Order that did one on a platform called Virtual and got their tab open. So they raised 360K Aussie, over 211 investors back in November 2018. So that was around 300K US, give or take. And then Amuka Esports from Canada, listed on Front Funder, they did 432 out of a 500,000 max, and I believe that's in Canadian dollars. So pretty 1-to-1. And then you guys are listed here now at the moment at 1,892%, I think, above your minimum subscription. So I'd love to learn a bit more about why crowdfunding, and also what is the process like. It seems to be so common. My Facebook feed is full of ads for hot sauce companies and solar companies going through crowdfunding. So I'd love to learn from you, like, what was the process like and also why?
Yeah, so we're working with a platform called Republic, which is one of many crowd equity platforms right now in the US. Globally, I think things are a little bit different, but in the US in particular, regulations essentially got relaxed so that it was possible to take investment from non-accredited investors. So before the Jobs Act, you actually had to be an accredited investor in the US to invest in a startup, which either means you have $1 million net worth or you're making $200,000 per year, and you're planning to and you think you're going to do so the next year. So that limits the number of people who can invest just the very top of the 1%. Because of the loosening of these regulations, or I guess a better way to say it is because of these new formats, it's called Reg CF for anyone that's interested in looking into it. Reg CF allows anyone to invest as little as $100 into a startup like Juked. And we like crowd equity for a couple of reasons. I think one of the most obvious reasons is that due to COVID, VC investment definitely slowed down substantially. But these crowd equity platforms are breaking every record. So when we talked to Republic, when we were talking to some of these other platforms, they actually started reaching out to us. We had considered it, but they all started reaching out to us because they've been just smashing their historical records these last couple of months. So I think a lot of individual investors are like, stock market kind of seems a little overblown right now. I think I can make more money by investing in the startup world. So that's really allowed a lot of folks to actually jump in and do that. We like this for a lot of reasons. I think the availability of the capital is the most obvious reason, but we also get to work with our community members. I mean, I'm a community member. I am an esports community guy in my heart. So I'd rather be beholden to the esports community versus be beholden to venture investors who might not understand the esports space as well as somebody who's part of the esports community.
So you're a brave man being beholden to Twitter. It's not something that a lot of people would say.
Well, don't put it like that.
Yeah. Well, it goes good and bad, right? At least it's the people who care about you are the ones that are investing in and going to, be your evangelist, right? It's like that whole Seth Godin, this is marketing thing of focusing on your first 50. You focus on your first 50 hardcore customers. If they come back to you all the time for some reason, they're probably likely to put some money into you and then tell their friends to come back. And now they've got a very biased reason for telling their friends to come back to the website as much as possible.
Absolutely. And in less than 2 weeks, we have over 1,000 individual investors in our crowd equity campaign. So if we can get a couple thousand brand evangelists, that's nothing to scoff at. So there's a marketing benefit for sure.
That's really true. And there's actually a good question coming through the LinkedIn Live, which is I was going to ask next anyway. So, talking about the virtual crowdfund with Order, the way that those crowdfunds work in Australia, at least in Order's case and maybe in all, is that you essentially have to publicly list. You have to open up your books. You have to create a very large investment offer document and go through a lot of that process without actually IPOing. What's the process for you guys to go through that public crowdfunding, and do you have to open up your books to people who are investing in you publicly?
Yeah, so if I'd recommend anyone who's interested to check it out, go to republic.co/juked. You can find all of our information there. We filed information to the SEC about our company, about our books. I think it's far less rigorous than like a full-on public offering, like being traded on the public markets. It's not the same thing. But we were very open, obviously, transparent about our books, and that's all available on our Republic page.
So how does this compare to like your last raise? Is your last raise public, and how did that go?
Yeah, we ended up closing our pre-seed round towards the end of last year with awesome investors. We closed 800,000 in our pre-seed round. We were part of 500 Startups, the accelerator here in San Francisco, one of the most prestigious accelerators, I think. So between 500 startups and about 10 or 12 additional angel investors, we did close that 800,000 round. We published information about this. We did a little bit of a PR. So if you just want to go to Google and search for Juked pre-seed, I'm sure you'll see it.
Yeah, fantastic. And there's one thing, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, so now's an apt time to talk about it again, is around, I guess, the size of investments and who's interested in the market. So like I run into a common problem with a few different projects and working with clients where they say, hey, Chris, we're doing this, we're raising our own capital, but if you can help out, that'd be fantastic. And my common reply is, I've got people who are interested in 10 to 30K, and I've got some investment banks who are interested in 10 million to 20 million plus, and I have no one in the middle at all. Actually, I have one guy in the middle, and that's it. And I know that we talked in the past during your pre-seed, and you were seeing some kind of stuff similar where you're saying, hey, Chris, we're at the right size or sometimes too big for solo or angel investors, but we're definitely much too small for VCs, and you were experiencing that same problem. So is that something you're still seeing in the market?
Yeah, I mean, I think with accredited excuse me, I don't know why I can't talk. With accredited investors, it's a hard word to say to my
Yeah.
yeah. But with accredited investors, I think 25K is like super common. I don't know why that number is like super common, but it's something that we saw a lot in our pre-seed round. A lot of people coming in at around that level. But again, this is one of the reasons why we love crowd equity, because it just opens the playing field up to a lot of different types of people. Whether you're accredited or non-accredited, it's available for you.
And can you talk about the sizes that are coming in from the mainstream? Then are you seeing mostly people just chucking in 100 to 500, or are you still seeing people coming through that vehicle putting in the 5 to 10K? And is there a cap as to what an individual person can put in through your crowdfund?
Yeah, actually, I would just recommend anyone can go to our page. You can see some of these investments coming in. For various reasons, I have to tell you to go to that page. So all the information is there. Believe me, there's some very weird like legal stuff about like what about me advising on this. So best thing I can say is go check out the page.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm starting to learn more about this stuff. I remember one of the weirdest ones was there was a public listed company that told me they can't retweet anything with their stock ticker in it. So they sent me like a hat, and I sent a picture of it, and they couldn't retweet it because on the hat was their stock ticker. I love these finance rules.
It's similar. It's a similar kind of thing to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the other topic I want to talk to you about is defensibility. So for you guys, the obvious question is, Twitch has installed Versus, which has enabled people to start creating their own tournaments. I'm sure that creates some questions around Blonge and Smash and these other third-party programs. What about for you guys? What's your defensibility if Twitch decided to turn on a feature like this?
Well, I mean, we think of ourselves as a kind of tech company and a media company hybrid. And as a media company, building your brand is the most important thing. Building your marketing channels is the most important thing. So you have defensibility. If you're creating the best esports content out there, and you have the best writers, and you have the best hosts doing the best show, then that is defensibility in itself. But we also need to create network effect. Our goal is to become giant. We want to become an empire, and to do that, we have to also think about how we build defensibility with the product itself. So when we think about that, your traditional network effect features, where the more people are on your site, the more valuable your product becomes, the more the higher the opportunity cost of going anywhere else. So when we think about that, we're thinking about social functionality. So building out individual profiles so you can see who your friends are, what they've watched, who their favorite esports teams are, how much of those esports have they watched. But we're also thinking about gamification. So building in, pick'ems. For Worlds last year, Riot did an official pick'ems event where you could predict who you thought was going to win throughout the bracket. And I think they had 4.5 million people play in that bracket pick'ems game. But that doesn't exist for the vast majority of esports out there, the vast majority of leagues. So we'd love to be that provider where you're not only going there because the content's all there, and the scores and the stats and the data and the streams, as well as our own original content, are all in one place. But we also want to be the place where all of your friends who are watching esports are commenting on news, sharing their profile, playing in gamification, creating watch parties, and things like that. So those are some of the features that we have planned that we're aiming to actually transition into focusing more so on those types of features in kind of the next 6 months.
It sounds to me part of it is like not everyone can do every feature, so there's got to be a thing for you in there. It's like not every hack, an ESL and MDL league wants to do complete pick'ems and wants to do complete watch the games with your friends and all of this kind of plugins and stuff that you guys are doing. You can't do everything.
It's hard to build that stuff. It takes engineering resources. Not everyone has that. And another thing I'd point out is like, look, we want to win. We want to be the media destination, but ESPN exists, Bleacher Report exists, Yahoo Sports exists, and that's just in the West. If you look at a global scale, there can be many, many winners in this space. It's a big enough pie.
I really wish I remember who said this quote because I've used it so many times, but I thought it was apt, which is like, it was a quote from someone saying, in 10 years, every company will function as a media company. And I think I'm finding that along with what you're saying as well. Even the fact of, Unicorn, a betting company, is a client of ours, and a big part of their website offering is esports news. Esports news has nothing directly to do with betting, but like you said, it brings people back to the site if you're creating good content. And it's the same with us. We're essentially an esports agency, but 85% of my inbounds come through LinkedIn, which is because I'm creating content on there for people to consume.
Yeah, content marketing, man. It's powerful.
It's the thing. We can all blame Gary Vee for that, I guess. So what's coming up next for you guys in the short to medium term? How long is there left on the public crowd fund? Are there any specific features that you wanted to roll out first?
Yeah, I mean, the reasons why we're raising funding right now is so that we can accelerate the growth of our product, as well as start to launch original content offerings. Obviously, hiring engineers is not cheap. So we're looking to build out our engineering team so that we can get on mobile. Right now the product works on mobile, but it works through mobile web. So we need to get apps out there as soon as we can. And that's going to be 1 to 2 mobile engineers. And we have a lot that we need to build when it comes to monetization as well. So there are a lot of products and features which I wish we could just snap our fingers and get out there. But unfortunately, that doesn't work like that. So we're raising against these goals of launching a mobile app, getting monetization out there, getting these social features out there. And also, I think that there's great opportunities in content right now in esports. At the very beginning of the show, we talked about the lack of storylines, the lack of just an understanding of what is happening in esports, what matters, what you should care about. We want to fill that need. We want to create the best esports show that covers all the news, but also here's the top 5 events to watch this weekend and why you should watch. And by the way, you can also go watch on a Juked link. So those are the goals that we're raising against and looking to really accelerate for the company.
Yeah, and I feel like something that you guys understand that you can do different is not just content for the sake of doing content, like understanding what the purpose of it is. And this is, I didn't see this trend happen too much overseas, but I saw it happen a lot in Australia a few years ago. So all the teams started attracting investment. There are a few that, got 500K to $1 million through the door. And then content became the word that they're all talking about. But they just put in such minimal effort that it was like, you may as well have not done the content at all. And I guess it's like it's a thing that a lot of people ask me is say, Chris, I'm doing a community esports event at a local internet cafe. How should I do a Twitch stream? And I say, well, don't. You don't need one. Who's going to watch it? Like, put more of that money into Facebook ads to get people to turn up. Put more of that money into free Coca-Cola for everyone who walks through the door. Put more of that money into anything else, or keep it for yourself so you can afford to pay yourself to run another one. And I'd be really interested to see that for you guys too, is not just content for content's sake, but really, like you said, driving home those exact storylines and telling people why they should watch and why they should care. Because I think that's, and I guess we both agree, that's a massive thing that's missing from esports. Because I feel like besides the OG Red Bull content, there's a massive lack of emotional content that happens in esports at all. Yeah, there's a lot of cool phase content where they do stuff and people love to follow them because they're flexing on people and they're doing some really cool stuff and they're working with cool brands. But besides like Red Bull following OG and Thompson to his family in Finland in the snow and talking to him about his upbringing, and I've seen a little bit of that around Counter-Strike as well. There's a real lack of that as to like, why should I care more than just the game or who's playing on stage? And I guess like another example, I saw this with the Overwatch World Cup in Australia, where it was like Australia versus Team Finland, and someone else was playing in Sydney back in 2017 or 2018. And it was a sold out arena. Everyone was having a fantastic time. The line for the Blizzard merch store was so long that it would sell out before, the line finished at crazy high prices for Blizzard merchandise, but they loved it. Mm-hmm. But what I noticed is that the crowd was going nuts in the tournament, but then the Team Australia could just walk around the crowd and no one would even stop them or look at them whatsoever. And I think it was because what I see a lot is that, why are the fans watching? They're watching just because it's Overwatch, because they all have this commonality that they love the game, and there's people that are playing on stage that are better than them, but they just don't care or know about those people on stage whatsoever. I see that with Overwatch. I see that with Fortnite a lot as well. So I'd love to see some more storylines for sure.
Yeah, every game is different. Some tournament organizers do better than others. And then you look at the international and they tell these amazing stories about the players. I mean, I still think free to play international, the documentary that Valve produced about the first international is one of the best pieces of esports media ever. And they do it every year. But it's really few and far between. I'll give another shout out to the Pop Flash tournament that recently happened in Valorant from the B-side team. That they did a great job producing those like player biopsies, or not biopsy. What is the word? They
Biopic, isn't it?
Biopic. I don't biopsy. Oh God. They did not dissect a player. They dissected his life. So they did some really good stuff actually in that tournament. And you got to see a guy like Psalm, who I knew that Psalm got second at the at the Fortnite World Cup. And I knew that he had this history as like, he played all these different games, but I didn't realize that he was a top Heroes of the Storm player, like one of the best Heroes of the Storm players in the world. I didn't realize that he had this epic like path through all these different games in different genres, and they told that story really well, and it got me way more invested. Just to keep going with the Valorant example, because I love what's happening in that community right now, the rivalry in North America versus TSM and Sentinels, they've been just building up this rivalry, and it's been like the fairy tale storyline because they kept meeting in the finals over and over and over again, and it just started to build this epic hype. And then Sentinels produced this like takedown video of just like, we're going to smash you. And it was beautiful. It got me so much more invested. And that's something that doesn't exist in most esports.
It's a good content idea from you to me then, actually, is to share some of these videos. There was even a 2012 World Championship Series StarCraft 2. That was like the first ever live event in Australia that was more than just a few trestle tables, really. We had Taste Toasters came over and commentated it. And it was similar as well. There was a local film and camera crew that did that, following the players' journeys throughout the group stages, the highs and lows of them winning and things like that too. I mean, I've been drawing so much comparisons in my content to it, just to what the UFC does. I think esports can learn so much from the UFC. The fact of, there's one major card that happens and the UFC sends out camera crews to do embedded for all of the major, the main card and the second undercard, following the fighters, talking to their friends, their family, their coaches about how they're feeling throughout the week, following their journey, highlighting all of their previous games. And you really get some buy-in there. There's like a massive there's a massive UFC coming up with Israel Adesanya from New Zealand, who's undefeated in MMA, and this will be his 100th pro fight win if he wins this across kickboxing and boxing and Muay Thai and MMA, versus Paulo Costa, who's like 12-0 from Brazil, and also they're opposite body types. Paulo Costa is a real macho bro guy. He's huge muscles, and compared to Israel Adesanya, he's literally a weeb. And it's a fight for the title. And they've just done a fantastic job of just following their complete storylines, their very different personalities. And, you can see the fans, they're super, you can see the comment section, they're super invested in what's happening. I'd love to see that more in esports, that leading up to the tournament, like you were saying.
Yeah, and I think that's our dream vision for Juked, is that over the next couple of years, we can build out the capability so that every single week we're telling a story about what's happening this weekend, because there's amazing gameplay. There's no lack of good gameplay. It's just a lack of good stories and understanding what matters in the space, and we definitely want to solve that.
So how do you find what to focus on then, when there's so much fragmentation within esports? There's so many different features that you could implement, like a mixture. And I guess that question's across two things: A, games/genres, and B, features for your own website.
Yeah. This is probably going to sound kind of conceited, but I just have to say that I don't know if there's anyone in the world who spent quite as much time as I have personally following as many different esports as I have, because even before I joined Twitch in 2011, I was working on a website called Gamescast TV, which aggregated esports streams from all these different sources. And that's when it all started for me. That's when I started just actively following games that I played, but games that I didn't play. I've never played Heroes of Newerth, but I was following all the big tournaments, and mind blown when they had 10,000 concurrent viewers. It was insane. And then at Twitch, one of the things that I did is my team curated all the content you saw on the front page of Twitch. So to do that, we had to build out our back-end knowledge of all of the major events happening across the platform. Now, flash forward 7.5, 8 years later, we're building Juked, and I'm still doing the same thing. So it's been quite literally a decade of following voraciously all of the tournaments that are happening across every major game. And it's difficult. I mean, but it's just something that I've tapped into. I think I've got a lot of different sources that I go to find this stuff, and it's really difficult. But I think we have the team. Chris is pretty similar, honestly. Like he really does follow everything. So when it comes to when we're writing our weekly newsletter, yeah, it's always going to be somewhat subjective. This week I put the DreamHack CS:GO finals, even though it was probably smaller than ESL Pro League, but we already talked about ESL Pro League last week, and there's all these different variables that are highly subjective that you have to kind of balance. But that's what you got to do as an editor, and that's kind of what I'm doing for Juked.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't understand that being an esports expert is like being a sports expert. It's pretty hard to know who the best freestyle swimmers are in the world, and extreme sports BMXers and Red Bull fighter pilot. Or Red Bull, air race pilots at the same time that extensively about the NFL and who's going to play seventh in the league.
Yeah.
So you must have a lot of, I guess you've set up, and I'm trying to articulate this for myself as well to explain like how I go through the data. It's like I've got this internal filter in my brain, and it's just been developed over 10 years, and I'm able to just filter in what I need to know and filter out what I don't. And somehow at the end, that through my brain algorithm, that just spits out my knowledge. I don't know exactly how it works.
And thus you have your popular content here on LinkedIn because you have that knowledge. You have 10 years of experience and you've built that. So,
yeah. And I guess it's like you were saying with, with your editorial content that I try to do with LinkedIn is I try to be the person to tell you this is what you should care about. And it goes back to the stories and stuff as well, right? It's cut out all the fluff, cut out the tournaments that don't matter, cut out the teams that don't matter. They're not trying. They're only good because A, B, C reason, whatever. And it's like, this is what you should care about. And that's what I find with my the way that I try to structure my LinkedIn content. Like there's a reason why I'm posting so much about massive live venues that are coming and telling everyone this is a trend. Not enough people are talking about it. And this is why I'm watching it for these reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And thank God we have Slasher's Twitter.
Yes. I got a lot of data for that guy.
He's transcended just esports. Now he's just everything you need to know about politics, whatever, everything.
Yeah, exactly. He's like I just came up with this in my head, but he's becoming like the esports Joe Rogan in some sense.
Yeah.
Where it's like you have a general theme that but there's always like the general theme is like almost everything, but definitely not some of these things.
I mean, Slasher needs to do a show. Like, yeah, he needs to get off Twitter and start doing a show. In fact, I doubt Slasher's watching, but let's talk.
Yeah, exactly. We've got to get him on. Hey, he follows me on Twitter, but I've never talked to him before. I'm one of however many thousand people he follows. So I assume he has a similar method to you, which is, following so many people and trying to push that data through his brain.
Yeah, it's the only good way. It's literally the only way prior to Juked is to just follow 500, 1,000, 2,000 people on Twitter, be subscribed to all the subreddits, voraciously consume that content every single day. That's pretty much the way that it happens for most people.
Yeah. And you know what? If I was to give one piece of advice, because I know there's at least one team owner and investor that's watching right now, is please just tweet out the stream link more often would be very helpful. Like I did it the other day. I think it was ESL. They were sharing some clips of ESL Pro League that was happening right then. And I was like, oh, that clip looks cool. I'd like to watch. No link. Like, okay. Where do I go? So I had to go, manually to twitch.tv and then I tried to search for it, couldn't find it. Then I hit browse and I hit Counter-Strike and then, okay, it's there. It's the third stream. Yeah. So that'd be nice. And once again, I mean, that's exactly why Juked exists, right?
Next time, just go to Juked, man. Just go to Juked. We should have it. If we don't, then we're messing up. But I think we'll have it.
So are there any other trends that you're seeing in the space at all? I guess part of what we talked about is, fragmentation in esports. That's a pretty general topic. You guys working on that. We talked about content, being something else. But are there any specific trends within esports or esports startups that you're tracking at the moment in the space? Anything interesting, exciting?
Well, I mean, I think the industry has matured a lot over the last couple of years. And finally, it's starting to get to the point where it's like, okay, where's the ROI? So, I think if you go back 2 to 3 to 4 years ago, esports, no one in esports could do any wrong. As long as you were growing and you had a active user base, you could raise money, you could do anything. But that's not really the case anymore. I feel like a lot of esports organizations are starting to look to let's go hire a business MBA from Harvard instead of let's go hire the person that has 10 years of esports experience. And similarly, from the investment side, you're starting to see just people taken down to earth a little bit. So, I mean, one of the most common topics that people have loved to talk about over the last couple of years has been this: is there a bubble? Is there not a bubble? But I think we're starting to see that transition towards like, okay, we need to make esports into an actual sustainable business rather than just a marketing tool for the games. And that transition has been underway for, better part of 5 years. I think you do have to love it or hate it. You have to give some credit at least to Overwatch League with the franchising model because that really was one of the major catalysts that was like, okay, Overwatch League is not a marketing device for Overwatch. It is a business and it needs to be treated like a business. So I think this is a macro trend that we're seeing kind of across the board, where you're not going to be able to just keep raising more money if you're an esports team or you're an esports league or you're a tournament provider. You're going to have to start to move towards building a business that stands on its own 2 feet. So I think it may be painful. I think there's a realistic possibility that we will see some teams go and some startups go. But I think it's a healthy transition that we're kind of seeing happen right this very second.
Yeah, it makes sense what you said. I did a podcast, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 ago with Todd Citron, who's the head of competitive gaming at EA. And he said the same thing. He said in the past, esports has been a loss leader and a marketing plan for EA, but now they're really trying to make it as a standalone profitability exercise for itself. And, been doing a lot of content with teams over the past couple of years for exactly that reason, right? They're the ones that have been attracting all the investment interest. Like in 2018, when I left Corsair and went on my own, every investor, all they ever talked about was teams. That's all they ever knew. And there were traditional sports teams buying esports teams or investors getting into the space. But now, you're seeing that capital kind of dry up a little bit when they're asking like, okay, where's the money? The traditional 12 to 36 month sponsorship model is probably not the way that's going ahead. So now you're seeing teams like Talon in Southeast Asia, they function as much as an agency as they do an esports team. You're seeing like the Chiefs in Australia, they make as much effort into running live events pre-COVID as they do to, pushing through their Nevia, their L'Oreal sponsorship or any of the other guys that they have. You look at FaZe Clan, for example, they focus so much on content and the way that they can sell relaunching the Rebel Whopper in the US versus more, 12 to 36 month sponsorships. Yeah. People are looking for revenue.
Look at also Team Liquid Plus, I think is a really interesting one too. I think you can, out of all of the esports teams, you can always point to TSM as one that actually from the literally before it was an esports team, it was a website that had millions of users and they're making money through Google Ads. And they've only continued to acquire more properties. They acquired the Blitz app. So TSM resembles more of a tech company than it does a traditional esports team. Team Liquid is similar in that they have Liquipedia, but they just launched Liquid Plus, which is like a straight up tech play. Like, we want to create a fan engagement tool that no one has ever created before. I think the savvier teams have been moving in that direction. I mean, you can even look at something like Rect Global, which is the holding company for Rogue, and they've been snatching up different esports properties to try and to build this more holistic business that does sponsorships, that does sales, that does content creation, that has a tech side to it too. I think most, if not every team that is venture backed right now is going this direction. I mean, a few come to mind that aren't necessarily, but most teams are going in that direction.
It's funny you were saying that about TSM because I completely forgot. And then my question is, what happened to Gosu? Because they were doing the same thing, right? It's Gosu.
That's a long time ago, man. That's history.
Yeah. Because they did very similar. I have no idea what happened to them. I remember they even had an Aussie StarCraft 2 player for a while, right? And they were in really early League of Legends, but disappeared off the face of the earth. One of those companies lost into the ether of esports, huh?
Yep, it happens.
Yeah. So how are you seeing coronavirus affect positively or negatively, your platform and also the tournaments that you guys are covering? Are you seeing a lot more time on site that you can attribute to that? Are you seeing tournament viewership go up or down?
Yes and no. So, I mean, there's this narrative that everyone seemed to be promoting early on in COVID that this is the best thing ever to happen to esports. And honestly, that's just bullshit. Excuse my language. It's complete nonsense. I mean, yes, especially in the early days of COVID, when every single sport was shut down, there was some new interest from people in the traditional sports world who were bored. But like, and a lot of people who did sports betting who were like jonesing for their fix. I think that sports betting and fantasy esports might be the way that COVID has actually positively impacted esports the most, because it really accelerated FanDuel and DraftKings and all these major sports betting and fantasy products to start adopting esports much earlier than they probably would have otherwise. But I mean, I don't have to explain it. Like, there's a huge difference between a bunch of people playing a tournament finals from their bedrooms versus sitting across from each other with 30,000 people in the audience cheering. It's not the same. And yes, esports leagues can go online, but first of all, there was a period where they were all scrambling and nothing was happening. Like, there was a dead period, and now everything is online, but it's just not the same. And the way that CSGO is happening now is you have CSGO tournament, ESL Pro League, season 12 happening right now. They have NA, EU, South America, Oceania, and probably, I forget if they have an Asia. I think they have a Southeast Asia league as well, for those teams. And that's how every tournament has to be, because you can't play from Australia to New York. It's just not going to work. So there's been pluses, but I don't think that they outweigh the negatives. At least not from where I stand.
Yeah, no, we're definitely on the same page there. I think the real plus for me has been media and influencers. That's really been the main ones. Like Riyadh is a friend of mine who's the owner of Gamers Group, who owns like Gameper and Esports and such. He was posting screenshots of up to, I believe it was something like 300% viewership on his site over coronavirus, because people are at home, they want more stuff. And even I saw it on LinkedIn when coronavirus first started kicking off around March or April. Massive dip in LinkedIn, because I think the last thing people wanted to think about was work, because they're worried about their job. Now I'm seeing a massive explosion as everyone's coming back in. They're looking for new jobs. They're looking for ways to innovate. They're hungry to go and do something different. As coronavirus, you could say, is kind of winding up in a lot of different spaces potentially. So yeah, and I'm seeing that with influencers too. We created a carousel and some data around that. One of my mates, he's got 800,000 subscribers. He creates ARC content, and he was saying, look, my viewership is up 50, 60, 70%, but my ad revenue is down 30, 40, 50%.
Wow.
So
yeah,
the advantage is that he's willing to sell ads at a lower price, which I think are more reasonable. I think his pricing he's selling at, he should have been selling all along, but now they're getting snapped up. We just did a Gigabyte notebooks campaign with him. We've just booked in another Asus campaign. We already did a Asus campaign before with him around, the new 3000 series launch is what's upcoming for him and stuff. So, he's going gangbusters. I've got another friend who works in advertising, who we've had on this podcast before, and he's done 4 million in influencer sales since coronavirus kicked off. And he said a lot of that is companies literally telling him, like, we're getting into influencers because of the coronavirus period. Like, this is where the interest come for us. And he's getting more viewership. But you're right about esports. Like, think about the travel companies. Think about the ticketing companies. If you think about how many staff ESL have employed, how many of those do AV, lighting, checking tickets at the door, security, travel itineraries, that all have zero to do right now when it's all online.
And we're seeing some of those companies try and pivot to start being producers, where they can just produce live streams, and that's their main thing now. Nerd Street Gamers, for instance, they recently raised a Series A where their entire business model is like, we're going to go do venues. And now they're like, okay, well, we're just going to do tournament streams now. In the meantime, actually like those guys a lot, and they're doing really well with what they're doing. But I think, the stuff that we're seeing at Esports Engine, they're ramping that up as well. So people are having to get creative. And yeah, you're completely right. Like, gaming is thriving in COVID, which is crazy. It's crazy that there's like silver linings in COVID for some industries and people. It's just weird to even say that. But gaming has never done better. Every single gaming stock is like 20% above their all-time high right now. But esports is different. It's not one-to-one with gaming.
That's really true. Yeah, that's really true. So what's coming up next for you? I mean, you guys are wrapping up this crowdfunding, rolling out new features. Anything else exciting on the horizon?
I mean, that's it, man. We're hoping to get those mobile apps out as soon as we can. We're hoping to launch our flagship show in the next month or so. I at least want to start trying to do some content there. But right now, this crowd equity campaign has been a lot of what I'm working on. We're literally 2 weeks into doing the campaign to the day. So we launched it 2 weeks ago, and we're already at 470,000 total raised for the campaign. So we're extremely excited about the momentum there, and going to keep pushing on that for a bit more to see how we can go, because I think for us, we are looking to raise a bit more capital as well on top of the crowd equity campaign. So we're going to keep pushing and see where it goes. But overall, really excited about our growth as a company as well. We recently hit 50,000 monthly active users.
Awesome.
We've been growing pretty organically as well. So we're not spending a lot of money, or almost any money at all, actually, on marketing. So those things are all positive. We're just trying to keep sane in the COVID world and keep pushing things forward.
Yeah, fantastic. And if anyone wants to follow you online or Juked, where's the best place?
You can follow me on Twitter at fishsticks with an X, or just head to juked.gg if you want to check out the Republic campaign, republic.co/juked. That's how you follow me.
Fantastic, mate. Thanks for coming on. We'll have to do this again in, I don't know, probably another 6 to 12 months, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I'll keep coming on anytime. It's always fun to chat.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, mate. And thank you for tuning in to this episode of the podcast. Once again, podcasts every week. Hope you enjoyed this episode, guys. Thanks. Bye for now.